accounting. There's some form questions, and if there's additional topics, we will extend it. We're trying to be flexible. Again, we just want to make sure that our schools and the advocates that are out there doing the good work are able to have the best information possible that brings together research, equity lens, and all of those pieces, okay? We're gonna jump in right now, and I have my own little notes here going on. So I have a co-facilitator, my friend, so please forgive me if my co-facilitator will go ahead and move forward. For those of you that want to get a hold of us, here is how you get a hold of us. I try to be very active on Twitter. I haven't posted my Taju Times vlog just yet for this week, but I promise you it's coming later today. There's our Facebook page, connect with us on LinkedIn, and again, the general line for those of you that want to send in your questions or get information on previous sessions that we've done already that came prior to this one, or upcoming sessions, and as well as online PD. Okay, dale pa'lante. Sorry, everybody, you're gonna have to bear with me, but this is about my 4th meeting today. So you're getting the already wide awake and ready to go Alexandra version. I always share this with everybody because it is very much at the heart and core of everything that we do. This is Taju's equity framework. It is a byline and through line for every single PD, every single support, coaching model, technical support, et cetera, that we provide. So even though today is about appropriate strategies for supporting our multilingual communities, please know that this framework will be very strongly through everything. It is a non-negotiable for me as well as for everybody in our organization. So yes, we want strategies. Yes, we want to make sure that we're utilizing best practice, but we also want to make sure that in doing so, we are selecting those approaches that close the gap in how we support our students, okay? Right now, more than ever during this time, it is very clear that our students who are multilingual learners and give you information and severe strategies, modeling of those strategies look like action. But please know that things that you do as you go back and look at the strategies that you've already implemented and employed, does it give greater access to your most vulnerable and oppressed groups like your multilingual learners? Okay, we're gonna move forward. I like to make sure that I share this critical piece. Many of us don't know as we're making adjustments, because there's been a lot of conversation by the Department of Ed, Office of Civil Rights, et cetera, a range of organizations around protecting the rights of our students with exceptionalities and special needs. I want to make sure that everybody understands that language learners or multilingual learners are also protected under these same protected laws, provisions, et cetera. So our responsibility and the lens, equity lens that we're utilizing as we're talking about and thinking about strategies today is how do we provide quality and effective alternative learning options to both communicate with our families, but also so that they can be advocates and teachers while students are home, but also so that we can make sure that students have access to learning. Estoy recibiendo información que es un poquito difícil de oírme. Is it still hard to hear me? Because I've relocated to try to get better connection, because this area is just a little spotty. Not at the moment. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm going to see what I can do about that, okay? We have some people that can hear us. A ver. Perfecto, gracias. Okay. If it goes out again, just let me know in the chat box again, and I will adjust if need be. Remember, as always, these will be posted after our live session, okay? So we're going to move forward. I want to ask you a quick question. How many of you, and I just want you to drop it into the chat box, be honest, speak your truth. How many of you are coming from a district, a building, a role, a place where you have intentionally and explicitly discussed and planned for how your students will use language while they're at home? And if so, what have you planned? Please jot it down in the chat box. How have you in your district or context discussed how your students will use language and planned for what that will look like? Hola, Amy. Okay, we have a couple of people who have shared. Any other brave souls joining us? Awesome. Hola, Sherry. Okay. Any other brave souls? We have a couple of people who I appreciate your vulnerability and willing to speak your truth, that we haven't had that conversation just yet, that we've talked at least about providing directions in multiple languages, that we're leveraging some of our non-instructional staff to access and navigate home language, offering translated pieces through Google Translate, conversations, hola Santiago, and provided recommendations around services, directions in various language. Okay. Awesome, my friends. Online learning. Perfect. We will use recordings to model and provide instruction, paper pencil support, packets in Spanish and English. So there's lots of things, right? There's lots of components that are already happening. I want everybody to really think strategically as we talk through this around 4 buckets of work. Number 1 is access to the information, right? And we'll talk about that in just a second. But if we don't have families and students that can access language and understand what that language is saying, we're going to struggle. Number 2 is, how do we create strong partnerships? Right now, we don't have brick and mortar schools. So without partnerships, the education will not continue. The learning won't continue. Number 3 is strategies that bring together second language acquisition theory, best practice, effective dual language programs, multilingual programming, and common sense. How do we keep kids engaged? Even though many districts did a really amazing job of planning for this time, I don't think many of us, even from my own perspective, were prepared for the stamina and duration, right? The length of engagement that our students were going to have to navigate. And that really is something that we're going to have to be mindful of. The final piece is how we match our students to the supports that they need without completely breaking our backs. So we're going to jump right in because there is lots for us to do. Okay. Mi ayudante, here we go. I need somebody willing to take off their mic, unmute themselves, because I'm tired of hearing my voice already, even though we're only a few minutes in, willing to read this slide.
I can do it. You hear me okay?
Dale, Christine.
Thank you.
We can hear you
Access.
fabulous.
Thank you. Access means balancing the use of technology, digital time and tools, with best practices for language learners, SEL, social justice, and honoring of the diversity of our families and the wealth of experience they have at their fingertips and how they are asked to learn.
Mil gracias, Christine. I'm giving you snaps de Chicago. All right. So remember that part of providing access is our legal responsibility, right? They have federally protected rights to have access to the educational program, whether it's dual language, bilingual, SCIF, newcomer, whatever the case may be. In doing so, we have to consider access to technology, right? Because that's just part of the reality that we have right now, with a balance against all of the other needs and all of the other challenges that may impact their success on those platforms. It's one thing to say, we're gonna make sure that all of our students have devices, whether they're Chromebooks, iPad, whatever the case may be. It's another thing to balance those Chromebooks with tools and ability to understand how to utilize them and navigate them, best practices that must be matched with them, and a very keen awareness of not drowning our students, particularly our language learners, in apps, in worksheets, in literacy, right? That disconnects all of the things that they have right around them, right? Like I've had to leave my office, right around me, I'm in my room now, I'm on the top floor of my house. I have access to all of these things, math and painting and jewelry and music. All of those things can be a playground for learning. All of those things can be seen as realia, manipulatives, tools to make the learning happen as we pair it with apps that give us transparency and eyesight into sort of how are they managing levels, et cetera, but we can have an either or. And right now we have a lot of students that unfortunately, if they cannot succeed for the number of hours a day on these platforms, or if they don't have access, we are struggling to provide some type of continuity to their education, okay? Pieces like SEL, social emotional learning, diversity, issues of social justice, multiculturalism, those things should not exist in silos. Those things right now should be part of the formula for how we strategize to access and accelerate learning for our students, okay? So I wanna pause there and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to just ask questions, check in, share what they might be doing to ensure that they provide students with access to technology, but also access to best practices for language learning, best practices for SEL, for social justice, multiculturalism, all of those pieces. Gracias, Amy, because Google Classrooms, and I've shared this on previous webinars, is one of the friendliest platforms for our multilingual learners. I think they're navigating about 127 different languages right now, which give our students and our families, even though it's not perfect, we're not looking for perfect, at least looking for some access instead of being completely dependent on everything being in academic English, okay? Any other questions, comments, shares? All right, my friend, we're gonna move forward. We're going next to partnerships, okay? Now, I know this might be a little bit challenging to, what? Sorry, I always try to read the chat box. I know this might be a little bit challenging to see. I'll get to the questions in the chat box in just a second. But I want to make sure that we think about our partnerships with our language learner families, as well as the partnerships that we have within our communities. For some of our partner districts across the country and across the globe, we still have blind spots to a significant number of our students, okay? I struggle personally with some of the conversations that I've heard and have been a part of. I want to make sure that as we go back and we advocate strategies, that we also are advocating issues of equity, and that none of us know what's going on in our students' homes. None of us. Some of us have like us, 3 kids, and they're all on devices trying to do things, and so the network is slow or whatever the case may be. Some of us are navigating health issues, pre-existing issues. Some of us simply weren't prepared for the shift to technology like me, okay? There are a range of things that are happening in everybody's home, and the first strategy that we must employ to ensure strong home to school relationships that are going to have to carry over into the fall is that we have to stop judging. We have to help others resist the urge to judge, and we have to choose compassion. Right now, like I said, I've been part of a number of conversations where, especially during this time of crisis, I'm hearing a level of frustration and lack of compassion, and we're going to just go ahead and say ... that I find very concerning. Right now, the priority needs to be stability, wellness, continuity, keeping our kids engaged, making sure that they just don't fall through the cracks, because we have already known that they are one of our most vulnerable groups, and that we're going to have to anticipate some gaps in the fall. But when we begin to judge and shut down opportunities to expand how we approach meeting their needs, I want to make sure that compassion is an essential part of that formula. Not only do we have to be understanding to those families that may or may not be connecting with the schools, but we also have to start thinking about employing some strategies that are outside of the box so that we can leverage resources and partnerships that already exist in the community, okay? In terms of making sure that your parents know the options, the learning options for their families, we need to make sure that not only are we posting it on our website, on our social media sites, in public spaces, on our websites, et cetera, but we need to make sure that we're posting them and updating of that information in the major languages spoken in high traffic areas. Now that could include your grocery stores. It should include your grocery stores, because even though our areas are still on significant restrictions, our grocery stores are still essential businesses that our families are visiting and can be tapping into to get information that they need in the languages that they speak. Our religious organizations, our TV and radio stations can be really great partners in this work. Particularly when I show you the model of what a learning packet or one of the learning kits can look like, I want you to think about how you might leverage social media or your television, local television stations, or the few precious moments that you have during that online learning to really give your parents and your families and your students the most important information that they need from you. I also want you to make sure that everybody has language helplines where parents have very clear information, and that we ensure that our building leaders have clear information and guidance around who should be translating and interpreting, what languages are available, and how parents are to navigate what they need in the languages that they need them, and during what hours, right? So I need everybody to have a sort of plan A, B, and C about how families get language support, whether it's a helpline, phoning in, tweeting in, whatever the case may be, in your major languages. And more than a district level staff knowing, and more than teachers knowing, our building leaders need to know, because our building leaders are the ones that can disperse that information to gen ed teachers, to collaborative team meetings, et cetera, and then also think about reallocation and distribution of resources based on the amount of calls, amount of support that's coming into those helplines, okay? So I wanna make sure to pause there and take any questions that you all might have, or ideas that you all might have. Yes, thank you. Some of us, unfortunately, are navigating multiple family members in our own homes that are personally affected by this and have already been impacted and contracted the virus. So this issue of compassion and ensuring that we are leading with our hearts first while ensuring continuity of learning is absolutely critical. Nobody knows what is going on, but we do have control over how we respond to it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. Okay, we're gonna move forward, my friends. Please remember, if you have questions or you wanna add in ideas, all you've gotta do is jot them in or send us an email after the fact. We're gonna move forward to implications of this for e-learning. Gracias. All right, my friends. Anyone willing to read that first little paragraph, unmute themselves and share? You guys know I get tired of my voice very quickly and easily. It cannot be a one size fits all. Anybody willing to share?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Okay, implications for e-learning. It cannot be one size fits all. Multilingual learners' languages and cultures are valuable resources to be leveraged for schooling and classroom life. Leveraging these assets encourage their agency in learning. This requires 1, access and desire to engage with the information and concepts. 2, variety and opportunity to use and reuse language strategically every day. 3, well-matched scaffolds and safety nets.
You did phenomenal. We are sending snaps to Ali Sunday, Chicago. All right, so this research comes from the WIDA Consortium. It's part of second language acquisition theory, bilingual education, foundational knowledge, all sorts of best practices and research around what works for our multilingual communities. When we tap into their cultures and their first language as an invaluable resource for their education, we build their agency, their willingness, and accelerate their growth and their acquisition, their growth in content and their acquisition of language exponentially. This requires a few things from the educators who serve them. Number one is we have to know who our kids are so that we know what concepts and information they want to engage with, particularly right now. We have some kiddos that, frankly, logging in, there's more enticing and engaging things that they'd rather do. And if we don't take this opportunity to tap into those things, we're missing out on opportunities. The second piece is that we have to provide variety and opportunity. We have to plan for language use every single day. If we're not planning for students to be able to use language strategically every day, we are planning for them to lose language every single day. And finally, we're going to talk about just some strategic, well-matched scaffold and safety nets for your language learners. that don't sort of overwhelm teachers in terms of the planning implications, because I know how hard it can be. Okay, we're gonna move forward. On the slide that's coming up, excuse me, again, everybody has access to this as a PDF document. So don't worry if you can't see everything right now. But I want to make sure that when we talk about those 3 points of access, variety, and opportunity and well-matched scaffolds, that I clarify. First and foremost, for content learning, if we want students to have access to grade level concepts, but we know that they don't have access and the ability to use grade level language, we have to provide access to native language throughout their journey. That's not saying that every single thing needs to get translated or provided in their native language, but we do have to provide sufficient access for students to be able to manage what their cognitive challenge is, right? The way I always explain it is, if you push me in the deep end of the pool, like we are right now, but I don't know how to swim, there's only so long that I can hold my head above water before I either start to sink or I choose to get out of the pool. So for us, we have to think about, how do we manage the balance of what our students are asked to think about and asked to juggle, right? Part of how we do that is by tapping into the diversity of what's already happening in our students' homes, their funds of knowledge, and what they can find, like the tangible resources that they can find already through activities that they're already engaged with their families. Not only is that going to help to make concrete some of the conceptual learning that they have to engage with, but it's going to also embed SEL, right? Family connection, stability into the way that they're learning. In terms of variety and opportunity, one of the strategies that I implore you is to work as teams collaboratively from a range of lenses, to plan less. Plan less. Simply allow students to go deeper and to approach each of those sort of learning units or kits or chunks from a range of lenses and modalities that allow students to continue practicing essential vocabulary, concepts, and language structures, grammatical structures even if need be, okay? I want you to consider the 4+1 language domains: reading, writing, speaking, listening, plus metalinguistic awareness and connections. I also want you to think about engaging them in all of the modalities so that learning does not have to become so bland and so monotonous, since they're already home in the same four walls every single day, okay? This can include language activities, kinesthetic activities, interpersonal, logical, musical, visual, physical. They can do all sorts of things as they engage in the same content. As long as we are planning these pieces collaboratively, it helps us to be able to be much more creative in how we maintain students' engagement levels. Finally, matching students with the correct and accurate scaffolds and safety nets requires that during our planning time, our collaboration times with our colleagues as teachers, that we have people from a range of departments, experiences, specialty areas, okay? Most of the districts and sort of educational agencies that I've checked in with and talked to already, they already have some type of collaborative planning that's happening online. I encourage us to leverage these collaborative meetings that are already in place as a core strategy to make sure that from the gen ed side, they are not planning in isolation for students that 24 hours a day are managing language needs. In order for that time to be most productive, you really want to think about what scaffolds are going to be necessary to get at the key concepts and vocabulary. Key concepts and vocabulary, that is absolutely essential across 3 pieces. Number 1, interactive supports. That can be that we might ask students to do interviews, call somebody. They might call their family members. They can call their grandparents, somebody that they know in another country. Right? It might be something like they're gonna be working in pairs to have discussion. I've seen some amazing partnerships between high schools and elementary schools where they are forming, just like we do with buddy readers in elementary buildings, they're forming buddy language partnerships with kiddos that have to practice their fluency and automaticity for AP exams and AP entrance and all sorts of things, with students who are language learners and need opportunities to practice a range of languages. The second set of supports are graphic. Many times these can be very generic. And so the graphic organizers, whether they're graphs, timelines, side-by-side columns, Venn diagrams, et cetera, they can be open-ended tools of support that we then fill in the blank with once we actually get into the classrooms with students to model how they should look. But how to use the tools are absolutely essential. Finally, I want to make sure that we have sensory supports. Those sensory supports are things like realia, models, pictures, manipulatives. More than anything, I want us to forget about all of the sensory supports that we typically rely on in schools. And I want us to prioritize sensory supports as the #1 support that we plan for around things that we know can be found around our students' homes. Okay? The kitchen can be an absolute playground for science and math because there's already so many things, sensory supports that can be utilized. So just by going to the kitchen and getting breakfast, I can reinforce all sorts of grade level learning and utilize those things as tangible sensory supports in that, as long as I'm guided, right, by my teachers and how to do that. Are there questions? Okay, I'm gonna continue. Gracias. Okay, the last piece is I wanna make sure, particularly when we're thinking about like the 4+1, that our students have access to some basic things. For example, pictures of what anchor charts might look like so that they can go back to those pictures, even if they only have a cell phone, right? We can send those pictures to a cell phone. We can load them on Google Classroom, whatever the case may be. We can send those and show those with our local media station partners when we're doing model lessons, et cetera, so that they can see what that looks like. I want us to think about bilingual dictionaries that they are forming on their own. Them having access to what the word is in English, as well as their partner language, is going to be absolutely powerful. And it's going to help them to be able to go back and have tools for independence so that they're not relying only on the time that they have with their teacher to figure out what that word is as they're practicing their language every day. Okay? There's a question about how I feel about food being realia. I will tell you that we use food as realia all the time in my house. When sometimes my kids will not do anything for me or for an activity that I've had planned with them, they will work for food. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about having kids always cook. Sometimes it's a simple thing of I'm serving breakfast and I want to give them fruit or pieces of something. I want to give them dessert. And I want them to say, how many should I give them? And I want them to talk about, maybe let's skip count. Maybe it's a multiplication problem. Maybe it's division. There's so many different things that I can do with food not just in the preparation of food, but in giving people food and thinking about, hey, look, there's 5 of us here in this house, but what would happen if we had to plan this meal for our entire family? And for me, my entire family, when we think about my parents and my siblings and all of my nieces and nephews, it's enormous, right? If I think of all of the different order of operations, number sense, geometric shapes that are available just through that, it opens the door. But only when I think very critically about the sensory supports that are available to our students, okay? The other piece is that I want you to really think about, if we're gonna put students on technology, particularly if the only thing they have is their phone, to engage in some of the apps like that involves literacy and math foundational skills is a little bit challenging. I've tried it myself, and I'll be honest with you, I gave up because my eyes couldn't take it, and navigating the screen and all of that, I felt like a fish out of water. For me, the way that leveraging these tools, when the tools are limited, right? The digital tools are limited, is to say, what are the experiences that we're gonna grant you access to that you cannot get inside of your home, and you may not ever get in your lifetime? Exactly, Alicia, just the way we did it way back when. So, I think about virtual field trips to zoos and planetariums and museums and aquariums, not just in your local city, but internationally, because internationally, they've made these resources and tools available all around the world. I can tell you right now that New York and California librarians have done a fabulous job of giving open access to the read alouds that they do, not just in English, but in a range of languages. Cal has partnered with Mexico, with the Department of, well, the Ministry of Education in Mexico, to give free access to a host of authentic resources, firsthand resources in Spanish, where students can explore, get excited about different performances and artists that right now is going to spark curiosity and inquiry, which is one of the most important things for our students to remember about education. Okay? Are there questions, my friends? Last but not least, I want to make sure that we talk about the scaffolds. Okay? One of the things that you've been provided with, my friends, is an example learning kit. Rather than packets, some of our partner districts have been really thinking about just learning kits, where they take an activity, a set of activity options that are natural for a family to engage in, whether it's listening to music or watching TV with subtitles or watching a movie. And giving parents and families a range of ideas of how they can extend that into all of the content areas across a range of modes. These learning kits give the flexibility of saying, hey, listen, we're not going to say that you have to do a specific app, a specific quantity, but here are the activities that we know you're already doing, right? You might watch TV, watch a movie, talk with your grandparents or family members to stay connected. You might be exploring a and with I'm back. Can everybody still see me? My bad. That is the joy of technology. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me again. Rather than sending all of these packets and working so hard to send these packets, that I'm hearing a lot of families are not doing, or that the learning is not sticking, or that it's leading to arguments where they're sort of snapping at their kids because kids don't want to sit down and do the packet or the learning for the day, that we say, let's just connect it and offer you a few resources. And then we're going to show you how to extend those resources and reuse them over and over again. This is an example that I've shared that would be something that could go home for 3 weeks. It would be something that we plan collaboratively for K through 2, not just one grade level at a time, so that we can maximize. And the goal is that we engage students in social studies activity. So if we're playing a game or talking over family dinner about the choices that we make because of what we value, students are learning language. They're talking about language. They're reconnecting to their own roots. They're learning to take pride in what their family values are that are not often part of the learning process. In doing so, they can also connect it to civic and social science standards by saying, okay, based on our family values and based on our family dynamics, where is it that we visit in our community? And so a map is included in that learning kit, a map that can be copied, but it's just one. This connects to all of the social studies, geography, social justice standards at the K2 level. In terms of math, we can connect math standards by counting materials for dinner. We can add or take away materials. We can have students write math problems for all of the ingredients that we use, for how many people are at the table, for how many people are in each of their respective families. If I think about me and my siblings, there's 6 of us, right? I can make math problems out of all of those. I can do a hunt of 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional shapes. I can talk about bigger, smaller, heavier, shorter, taller, short, right? All of those pieces that are math questions, math concepts, math standards. I can connect it to reading and language. I can connect it to writing. I can connect it to every content area so that students are able to continue learning, focus on essential priority standards and concepts and vocabulary and language use without necessarily getting inundated with some of the tools that they're being asked to do it with, right? We're gonna stop constraining student learning with the stuff so that we can really allow families to find emotional stability, physical health, and educational continuity in language use. Does that make sense? Pause quickly. The last piece is that in those learning kits, our families get a range of scaffolds, and those scaffolds allow your students to be successful, okay? So rather than all these packets, we make sure that our students get ideas for how they can use the activities that they're already utilizing at home. They get a map so that they connect those to essential social studies, civic standards, social justice standards. They get vocabulary that is essential for them to continue building academic tier 2 and tier 3 language. They get ideas and even maybe a notebook so they can have their own bilingual dictionaries. and additional strategies to provide scaffolds that are flexible for a range of activities, okay? Then they also have access to digital tools if they have access to that piece. But we're not gonna spend significant amount of time providing our students who are most vulnerable with packets that are written and delivered from a monolingual lens, and in one language, and a one size fits all, and without any linguistic scaffolds, because that doesn't set them up for success, okay? So my good friends, I wanna share with you one that we did with trolls, and I know that we're getting close to time, but here was one that we actually developed with one of our school partners, and it was very, very basic. So we watched the movie Trolls. It was something that we already wanted to watch. We knew our kids wanted to watch. And so in doing so, we said, okay, what are some of the themes? What are some of the opportunities for us to just extend this into all of the different content areas, right? So we talked about the history of music. And while Trolls focuses on certain genres like funk, they have the reggaeton trolls, they have hip hop and pop. It opened the door to really exploring all sorts of music and the history behind that music. What's the history of rap? What's the history of bachata and merengue and cumbia and salsa? Because many of them have connections to important historical markers for their own cultural backgrounds. Now we thought about, okay, science. How can we extend this into science? Okay. We thought about really considering this idea of how do we lose our colors, right? Like the trolls. How do we lose our colors, lose our happiness based on whether we're inside or outside, how much light we have? How does that connect to the season? When we might find our true like branch, my man, right? How do we feel more or less gray depending on the weather? And so it opened the door to be able to start to measure and monitor weather and our emotions. We noticed that, hey, the days that it was rainy, particularly during this time of quarantine, we felt a little bit sad. There's a scientific phenomenon around that. And we helped kids to be able to explore that piece. Students read books, and the books that we read, there's a range of resources. I tend to do read alouds from a range of sources. And I like to extend that. People know very honestly, I try to do authentic texts, but I also want kids to have access to those texts that have like social clout, that have social weight to it. And sometimes that's the clementines that are translated texts, and that's okay as well. Writing, I like it for it to be really open-ended. We gave a range of writing prompts, and we made sure to have sentence stems that supported students in what they liked about the movie, what they liked about themselves. If they were a troll, what kind of troll would they be? If they could add a new troll village, what troll village would it be? Okay, and so this gave students opportunities to really explore writing, opinion writing, and even descriptive writing. What about the movie did they enjoy around an activity that was already developmentally appropriate for K2 and had the flexibility of being done in a range of languages, okay? We also extended that to a range of modalities. So we listened to music. YouTube has a great opportunity for kiddos to really just think about, okay, what other genres of music are there? And we listened to a bunch. I listened to a bunch that I never knew existed and really stretched my family like, I wonder why this music is enjoyed. What about it? What about this music do we think speaks to others? And I think that's important. In the end, the unit really was about social justice, because one of the things that we find students have a hard time with is, even though we ask our educators not to judge others, our kids are they learn from us. They see that we're already doing that. We see that we judge others very harshly at times. And so they find themselves, even I found my own kiddos saying, oh no, I wouldn't have forgiven that hard rock troll. No, she was mean. And what's another way, right? Instead of saying we won't forgive because what they were trying to do was so terrible, how do we move forward together? Because we need each other. All the trolls in this movie needed each other to harmonize, just like we all need each other in order to harmonize. How can we do that? And how can we well? And so I think it will be with you, students, if just remove all of the things that are happening in their homes from the formula for how they succeed academically and continue to practice language meaningfully, I think we are going to find that the gap has grown so big that we can barely keep our arms around it, okay? I wanna make sure that I close us out today just with sharing. We have been trying just to make sure, because our partners, if you'll go ahead, our partners have been asking us a lot. Alexandra, these webinars are absolutely fabulous, but we have a range of needs across all of our districts. Do you have ways that you're supporting your schools? All of our schools that we support right now, we've transitioned just about all of them into our virtual learning platform. These are virtual learning supports that we are offering to everybody, particularly schools that the issues of equity are glaring right now. It's coming to fruition, sort of all of these supports and all of the capacity building efforts that we did not put in place prior to this pandemic. They're surfacing in very, very real ways that are having impacts on our kids. And so please feel free to email info@tajlearning.com if you want more information about those pieces. But we will continue each week to provide as much information and support and guidance as possible. Please let us know what questions you have. I thank you for all of the questions, all of the glows that were put into the chat box that I'm just looking over right now. As always, I will stay on for just a couple of minutes. And if there are questions that are burning questions that you want to just type into the chat box or ask after we get off the call, please, by all means, don't hesitate. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday webinar. Gracias. Lo agradezco. Hola, hermano, yo te veo ahí. You're welcome, you're welcome. Bye, friends. We'll see you soon.
Muchas gracias.
Ay, de nada, comadres. Deja ver. Estoy tratando de hacer. Okay.
Alexandra.
Oh my goodness!
I just wanted to turn my video on just to say hi.
I'm such a ham.
I was in this mornings and then this afternoon, and I'll be in on Friday and all that fun stuff. We I found out a few minutes ago we got our ELPT scores. I think came out today. So I already texted Debbie and I'm like, let me know how we did. I'm dying to know how our kids did. Because we just finished up that very last day that we were at school. We had finished up all of our kids, so I'm dying to know.
Allison, why would you tell me that right now? I'm literally
I know.
like, look, I don't know if you
know.
can see my hair.
I know. Debbie
Okay.
texted me back and she said that she was trying to log in to see, to access the scores. So,
Okay. Okay. Bated breath. Bated breath.
I mean, fingers crossed.
Yay. Awesome.
I'll see you Friday.
Exactly.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. I'm trying to get the video, and it says my video, so you could see me, and it says failed to start video camera. But morning I was with my EL consultant that the district hired so they can hire me on last year because they needed it. And we were going back and forth about, not 100% sure.